Good evening. The first Rwanda flight is preparing for takeoff tonight, but there are thought to be just 8 migrants on board and 192 empty seats. The cost of the charter flight, £500,000.
Shameful and a scandalous waste of public money, say opponents, but the government says it's the start of a 5-year strategy to deter thousands of migrants from crossing the channel.
We're live at Westminster with political reaction tonight. At Ramsgate, the scene of a major protest, and at Dover, where our reporter Joe Coshin has seen many more migrants arrive today. Joe, how many boats today?
Several boats attempting to cross the channel today, and more than 250 migrants being brought to shore by Border Force teams, among them very young children. Not just here in Dover, though, there have also been reports of small boats arriving along the coast in Dungeness and in Ramsgate this afternoon. So not the ideal start the government would have wanted to its Rwandan initiative. And since the plan to send asylum seekers to Rwanda was announced by the Prime Minister here in Kent 2 months ago, the number of people making the crossing has now topped 5,000, if you take into account today's figures. Now, we only have half the data for April and June of this year, but still compare it to last year's data, and this year's figure is still higher. Now, the so-called Rwanda plan is getting global attention, and when it was announced, the government hoped it would have maximum impact and act as an immediate deterrent to these channel crossings. But evident today and over the last few weeks, that hasn't been the case. However, one former UK Border Force boss believes it is still an effective policy. Kevin Saunders says once the plane starts flying, the boats will stop crossing.
Hopefully now, if we can get a plane off today, then people will see that we are serious. We've got to send the flight, whether there's 100 on it or whether there's 1 on it. We've got to send the flight.
Well, not all Border Force workers are on board with the plan, though. The PCS union, who represents some of them, have taken legal action against the government. Its General Secretary says the policy is cruel and irresponsible.
So we think it is utterly irresponsible to deport anyone to East Africa while the legality of these proposals is in question. But there's also the morality. These proposals lack all morality. They are inhumane, and people fleeing torture and persecution should be welcomed and looked after here and their cases assessed here, not sent to the other side of the world.
Oh, shut up.
Well, it's easy to forget when focusing on just the numbers, but it's important to remember that these are people, human beings, trying to seek asylum and safety here in the UK. And those arriving today, even when faced with the prospect of being on a flight to Rwanda, those from the likes of Iraq, Iran, Syria and Ethiopia are still willing and still desperate enough to risk their lives to make that perilous crossing.
Well, legal challenges to the Rwanda flight failed on Friday, yesterday and again today at the Supreme Court, but further challenges lie ahead.
Yes, and further protests as well. One is getting away now outside a migrant processing centre at Ramsgate in Kent. Kit Bradshaw is with the demonstrators.
I'm some 20 miles away from Dover, and for many brought ashore after crossing the channel, this is their first stop. It's what the government call a secure processing site, and migrants are brought here and can stay here for up to 5 days while security and background checks are carried out before being taken to more permanent accommodation, often in hotels across the country. Now, it's been very busy here today. We've seen lots of activity over the past few hours, perhaps unsurprising given how busy it's been for channel crossings. Around an hour ago, I saw a coach of around 100 people arrive with Border Force staff as well. But the protesters organising their protest tonight are vehemently against the government's new Rwanda policy. That threat, or deterrent as the government would see it, that those migrants being brought here today could be removed to Rwanda some 4,000 miles away. One of the charities involved in tonight's protest is Care for Calais. They say the government cannot be allowed to act with impunity.
Shifty.
Refugees, by their very nature, they're obviously fleeing something terrible. So there's huge push factors making them leave in the first place, and they'll have their own personal.
What about Care for the UK?
Comes to the UK, a really obvious one, which we've seen in the news today, is that a couple of people have family members here in the UK. So I don't think that would stop you from coming here. All it does is further traumatise already traumatised individuals.
The Conservative MP for Dover, Natalie Elphick, she supports the policy. In her words, trying to stop channel crossings is the compassionate thing to do. But if the numbers crossing the channel today are anything to go by, it doesn't appear that deterrent effect the government is aiming for has happened yet. Maybe we'll have to wait until that first flight has taken off and landed in Rwanda for a few months' time to see exactly what impact this controversial policy will have on channel crossings.
Kit Brad